we get started, we're very happy at DSPT to welcome back Professor Sophia Stone, who did her PhD at Purdue University, but before that, earned her MA in philosophy here at DSPT back in 2004. She's currently an associate professor of philosophy at Lynn University, where she teaches the nationally recognized Dialogues of Learning curriculum, organized around the themes of self and society, justice and civic life, and belief and reason. She specializes primarily in ancient philosophy, Greek mathematics, and public philosophy. Her leading publications explore how Plato's ideas resonate across cultures, from Mesoamerican philosophy to modern ethical dilemmas. She's also the founder of Wisdom's Edge Foundation. We have little cards about bringing philosophy and wisdom to those who would not otherwise have access to it. So please join me in welcoming Professor Sophia Stone.
Brother Dean Pascal, thank you, Robert, for helping with the setup, and thank you, colleagues, former professors, friends, and family. Thank you so much for coming. Today, I'm going to give you a talk on the philosophy of wonder, creating aha moments when thinking with others. And what I'm going to share with you today, I think, can help our democracy. I think it can heal communities. I think it could bring people together. And it's worth doing. And I encourage you to join me after in the practicum so we can try it all together. So here are the aims for today. At first, I'm going to talk about Socrates. He was actually our first public philosopher. And I'm going to talk about his connection to wonder. Then I'm going to talk about the philosophy of wonder. And then Plato on freedom in learning. And then civil society and the need for philosophy for children, Hawaii style. I'll explain why specifically it's Hawaiian style and not any other style. And then I'm going to give you an example. These are two examples, amazing examples. I'll have a brief question and answer period, and then I'll invite you to join me in the next room for our gently Socratic inquiry. So teaching and learning in ancient Athens were conducted in public spaces. We forget that. So in the gymnasia, in the academy, Plato's academy, in the lyceum, in the agora, people gathered together and they did philosophy. The agora, or the marketplace, had an age restriction of 18 years or older. And so young men who wanted to go and talk, to the marketplace to talk to Socrates were not allowed to. And so what the ancient sources told us was that Socrates would go to adjacent shops, specifically Simon the cobbler's shop, where the young boys would come and bring their parents' shoes. And there, Socrates would engage the children in philosophical discussion. Diogenes Laertius tells us that Simon was the first to write these Socratic conversations down in Aristotle's Poetics. He calls it Socratic logoi. And supposedly we have about 33 titles in one volume. Unfortunately, none of those have survived. We get this idea that philosophy is wonder from Plato's Theaetetus. So Socrates says to Theaetetus, "For this is an experience which is characteristic of a philosopher. This wondering, themausden, this is where philosophy begins and nowhere else." And so you might ask, well, what is wonder? What does it mean to wonder? Well, we see in the second example, Aristophanes in the Symposium tells his friends, makes me wonder, themausden, makes me question whether the orderly sort of love in the body calls for the sounds and itchings that constitute a sneeze, because the hiccups stopped immediately when I applied the sneeze treatment. So this is just a silly example, but we know that when Plato has Socrates talk about wonder, he's really talking about questioning, exploring. And if you've worked with children, they are great with asking questions. Children are great wonderers. So Plato has this interesting idea about play. Plato talks a lot about education in the Republic and in the laws, and pays special attention to children. He says all great and numerous labors belong to the young. This is in book 7. He says, therefore, calculation, geometry, and all the preliminary education required for dialectic must be offered to the future rulers in childhood, and not in the shape of compulsory learning either. Because, and this is so important, it's going to be important for today, and hopefully you'll take this with you, because no free person should learn anything like a slave. Forced bodily labor does no harm to the body, but nothing taught by force stays in the soul. Then don't use force to train the children in these subjects. Use play instead. So we are today in a crisis. I don't think that I will have any kind of pushback or disagreement here, but we have social media polarizes our communities. It draws us in. People are addicted to social media, and it's having negative consequences on our relationships, our family relationships, our professional relationships. We do know that in about 2009, according to Mr. Hoyt, that Facebook and the social media companies have changed the algorithms so that we become more polarized, because the most important thing for them is that we stay on our phones, that we stay hooked, that we stay connected. And what connects us? Catastrophizing. The worst case scenario you're going to look at, right? And so any kind of reporting of the news, any kind of reporting of a story, what's going to get the most clicks, the most shares, the most attention is utter catastrophe, imminent doom. Oh my gosh, we're going to die. Look at your phone. We also have artificial intelligence. We have now artificial intelligence is everywhere. It's helping us in innumerable ways. We're able to do tasks that would normally take 10, 20 people to do in 5 days. We can ask the AI to do, and the AI will do it for us in 20 seconds. So labor now is starting to change, and people are starting to feel like they are insignificant, that they don't matter, that people can be discarded for profits. Along with the polarization in social media, we also have a polarization of adults. We have family members who cannot talk about differences. We cannot talk about political differences. We cannot talk about religious differences. We cannot talk about differences in principles. And I'm telling you, if we can't talk about our disagreements in a calm, inquisitive way, our democracy is at risk. We need to be able to talk to each other. We need to be able to work out through our differences. And we need to start in the public schools. We need to start in the private schools. We need to start with our children so that they grow up being comfortable talking about difficult subjects with people who disagree with us. Another problem is technology and distracting parenting. I challenge you to walk down the street and find someone who's pushing their child, their carriage, or a caregiver who is not also on their phone. Children and babies need connection. They need to feel seen. They need to feel heard. So many times I've seen parents on their phones pushing the swing, pushing the stroller, crossing the sidewalk with their child. Does that look familiar? And then the children are also like, okay, mommy, right? And we are not connecting with one another. It's interfering with our ability to be human with one another. Coupled with the use of technology as a babysitter, as a quick balm to a child's outburst, the child now knows that that screen, that cell phone, that video game is the answer to all their problems. We also have fear of the unknown. And this is making us anxious. We have a loneliness epidemic, and we have young people who are choosing to be single and to be unmarried because human connection, human commitment, relationships are a scary thing. So it's easier to stay alone. It's easier not to take any kind of risks. And it's easier to do that now that we have something else that can provide us entertainment, that can provide us comfort. The phone, the iPad, the movie. And so this leaves us with a disengagement with the world. But I have a solution for you. P4C Hawaii. This is Dr. J up here. I actually had, he was giving us a ride, and I thought it was cute that he has a P4C license plate. He was so proud of it. And I said, let me take a picture of you with your car. So today, Philosophy for Children Hawaii is a worldwide movement. It started in 1969. Matthew Lippman was at Columbia University, and he was concerned with his students' inability to reason well and to make sound judgments. And so he wanted to start young. He wanted to give children the tools so they can reason well, get used to reasoning well, making sound judgments early. And so he started in 1974 at Mount Clare. He founded the Advancement of Philosophy for Children, and it's now an international movement that center is still there. And in 1980, Dr. Thomas Jackson, Dr. J, as the children called him, trained with Lippman and then brought P4C back to Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is an interesting place. Hawaii is a confluence of immigrants, of expats, of indigenous populations, right? We have this on this island. We have diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. We have diverse cultural backgrounds. And the way that Lippman was doing his philosophy for children just didn't work in Hawaii. He found out that there were just a few people talking, monopolizing the conversation, not everybody talking. He felt that some people felt excluded from the conversation. Not everybody had the power to speak. Not everybody had felt like they were being heard. And so he made these tweaks. He made these changes, which I think create miracles in the classroom. And so in 1984, Dr. J became the director of philosophy in the schools. And then he created that job himself. And then eventually he got this big grant from the UK. And so they founded a center called Uhiro Academy for Philosophy and Ethics in Education, and where he still runs it today. So I've trained with them. I'll just give you a quick kind of biographical story of how I ended up here. As some of you know, I love talking with others, and I will create events to gather people together so we could talk about philosophy, so we could talk about our principles, so we can talk about ethics. And so I'm always looking for new ways, better ways to do that. And so it was 2019 at the Pacific APA, and I had organized a panel on Greek mathematics and ancient Greek philosophy. But before that, Matsuda, who had accepted my panel, he was moderating this talk on philosophy for children. So I thought, oh, I'll just support him because he accepted my panel. I thought it was the least I could do. And there I met Dr. J, I met Amber, I met the group from P4C Hawaii. They had given a demonstration. And when I sat down in that circle and I participated and I was thrown the community ball and I was invited to speak. It was a different level of philosophizing. It was this philosophizing in a way that I felt so happy when I was finished. And it was a different feeling than just other philosophy gatherings. And then I realized then that I can do what I really have always wanted to do, and I wanted to bring philosophy to the homeless. So after that, in the fall of 2019, I started my organization called Wisdom's Edge Foundation, where we bring free philosophy classes to communities that don't have access to the university. And so I do now go to transitional homes for women, and I give them philosophy. I also do public philosophy. I do philosophy in nature. There's all these things. You're invited again to take a business card later if you want to know more about that. But what happened is that with this organization, of course, the pandemic happened and everything went online or whatever. Fast forward to 2022, I finally was able to take their 2-week summer workshop. I went to Hawaii and actually participated. I saw the model schools. I must have visited 30 classrooms from kindergarten to high school who were doing this method of plain vanilla inquiry, gently Socratic inquiry, which I'll talk about in a second. And so I brought it back to Boca. I started doing pop-up philosophy for children in the park. I started using this technique in my university classes. I started using these techniques in my philosophy nature, public philosophy events. And each and every time that I do that, it builds community. Each and every time that I do that, people walk away feeling energized, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling that there's hope for the future. And so I'm on a mission, I guess, in sharing this with you. And I hope that if you like what you see today, that you'll invite me to give more talks, to participate, to come and teach, to come lead discussions in this method. Okay, so the method works well with integrated students with learning differences. It works well with multi-generational groups. In my public philosophy events, I've had participants as young as 7, as old as 96 participate, and it works. And also with scholar specialists. In fact, this picture is where I gave the demonstration to the Plato conference on Plato's theory of forms in Prague of last year. So there's a difference between big P and little p philosophy. Big P philosophy is the philosophy academics and scholars do. So we studied Plato, Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas. So these are big P philosophers. And big P philosophy doesn't have the best reputation, right? Typically, if you attend a philosophy class, there's the professor at the front, and maybe he's grumpy, or maybe he's over arrogant or confident, or and what the professor says is like, right? And if you disagree, there'll be an argument in class, and it'll get very heated, and that's our take of philosophy. A lot of people think that philosophy is too hard for them, or that it's, I don't know, like a certain class, right? That normal people, ordinary people can't do philosophy. But little p philosophy is what children do. By the way, how many of you have been a child before? Just raise your hand. Anybody been a child? Okay, so you're all little p philosophers. So little p engages in wonder and curiosity about the world. And all children in this sense are little p philosophers. So this is the method. And I'm skipping a lot here. If I were to come and give a semester-long class, I would add all kinds of things that I'm not saying here. So the most important is the Good Thinkers Toolkit, which you all have on your handout. These tools help us, give us that space to think deeper into what people are saying and helps us form questions. And it's great when children learn these tools as well. It's great when an 8-year-old says, hold on, we're working on an assumption here that we can't check unless we ask Google. So let's not go there, right? It's amazing when children will say that. So W questions are questions seeking clarity. So the big what is F question that Socrates is always asking, what is piety, what is justice? That's a W tool. And we can ask when people are making claims, we can ask them, well, what are your reasons? What are your reasons for why you think that the end of the world is near, for example? It's not enough to give your opinion. People give opinions all the time. And we just like, oh, that's a crazy opinion, and we just let it go. But you know what? You have the power and the right to ask, well, what are the reasons for that opinion? A is for assumptions, and assumptions make clear what we're taking for granted. We make assumptions all the time, and they're not always bad, but we need to make sure that we're being clear about what we're taking for granted. And so we can ask, oh, well, you're making an assumption here. Is it reasonable to make that assumption? You can ask your friends, your colleagues, your family members, right? If they're assuming something, just call them on that. Wait a second, you're making an assumption here, right? And then you have the inference. The inference is connecting two logical statements together. So if then, and usually it's causal, right? So if I come to class late, then I won't know what is expected of me for the reading, for example. A T tool is so important, especially these days when we have so much fake news or deep fakes, right, in media. Is it true? And we can ask, is it true today? Because sometimes some things are true today and they're not true tomorrow. Like it's not true that it's raining outside, but it might have been true a few days ago. Is it sometimes true? Is it always true? Is it never true? And then if you have a disagreement on what is true, you can say, well, what's your evidence for thinking that it's true? Or if you don't understand what somebody is saying, a claim that somebody is saying, you can ask, well, can you give me an example so I know what you mean? Imagine children having these tools. Imagine giving these tools to children in first grade, in second grade. And imagine them using them as they mature. By the time they are gonna take their SATs or their, whatever standardized tests, they have already used them enough so they feel comfortable enough so that they can think at a high level. And then C, you can always, if you still have that disagreement and that person is not being open to your view, you can give them a counterexample. Well, what about this? That might show you're wrong. What about this example, right? And then they have to respond. So these tools are good for having these kinds of discussions. One of the most important things, though, is to establish intellectual safety. Intellectual safety is not feeling safe in the classroom from your emotions. Intellectual safety is not about trigger warnings. Trigger warnings actually are bad, I think. Intellectual safety is about being able to ask any question that is on your mind without fear of ridicule, without feeling ashamed. So this is the quote from Thomas Jackson: in an intellectually safe place, there are no put downs and no comments intended to belittle, undermine, negate, devalue, or ridicule. Within this place, the group accepts virtually any question or comment, so long as it is respectful of the other members of the circle. And that's the important thing. You can ask so long as it respects the group. So this is the whole process. First, you have the stimulus. The stimulus can be anything. It could be a picture, it could be a song, it could be a poem, it could be a passage, a short passage, it could be your reading assignment. And then every participant is invited to give a question. And this is so important because these questions give perspective to the stimulus. And it's powerful. It's more powerful than the professor asking the students the question. Why? Because you're only giving that one perspective from the professor. If you get 10 or 15 questions from the students, you get 10 or 15 perspectives on the material. And then everybody gets to vote. And the question who gets the most votes, that's the question that gets chosen. And the person who wrote that question, they start the discussion. And they have to say why they came up with that question, what they were thinking about, and then they offer the answer. And then they invite the next person to speak. After that inquiry, that discussion, there is a public evaluation. And this is really important because it sets up the expectations for the next discussion. So we have the community ball. This is kind of like a talking stick in a class that we come back to regularly. We actually make the community ball together on the first day. So this community ball was made from my students from the last block. So with the community ball, we have certain rights. So the person holding the community ball has the right to speak, the right to invite, and the right to pass. So if you've been throwing the ball, you don't want to talk, you can say, well, I need some more time to think, but then you decide who's going to speak next. So even with those students who don't want to say anything, they have to participate. So it's 100% participation. And then these are the evaluation questions. We evaluate on community, inquiry, and progress. So community, how well were we listening to each other? Did we feel intellectually safe, or did we feel guarded? Did we feel like we were being judged? And did everybody get invited to speak, or was there a ball hop, right? Was there just a dialogue? And then what about the inquiry itself? Were we focused? Did we stay on topic? Was it interesting? Did we use the Good Thinkers Toolkit for our questions? Did you challenge your thinking? And then progress, and this is so important, what progress have you made? Have you shifted a little from the time that you came into the classroom for the time that you ended it? And sometimes you're more confused. Well, that is progress too, because if you're confused, you're checking on your own original stance and you're thinking, maybe I was wrong in that original stance. So I'm going to give you some examples. Hopefully we have time. I don't know if we have time. What do you think? 10 minutes?
We have 10 minutes.
We have exactly 10 minutes. Okay. So these are
And yeah, I was thinking of like in my math class, we had to do this whole unit about logic.
Right, I just want to give you this first group has been doing P4C Hawai'i since they were in first grade. And so you can see the level of advanced questioning, but they're not Plato scholars. And I gave them a passage that normally a Plato graduate student would struggle with, the aviary passage in the Theaetetus. So I just want you to never mind the way that they're speaking, but think about how they approach their questions and how they use the method. Oops.
And yeah, I was thinking of like in my math class, we had to do this whole unit about logic and like the true false tables and stuff. And I was thinking about that as kind of like tying back into like the idea of like what can you know for true, I mean for like certain. And I was thinking of that because like you can prove an argument with like that you can prove an argument is like valid, I guess, without it having to be like a true statement, because the logic can still be sound without it being like a statement that's like true in real life. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but like how the difference between like invalid versus false is what I was thinking about. And about like the apiary, I think. I was thinking about that and like how that relates to like possessing knowledge. And with like the 7 plus 5, I think that's something, if you could say it's 11, depending on what you mean by the question, because you could still use a different kind of logic, I guess, if what you meant by those different numbers were different, then you could use different logic, and that would be a valid point, but it wouldn't be true, if that makes sense. So I was thinking about that and like catching the different birds. And like, I guess there's like, for one thing, you can like view the bird as like different and in a different way with what Chloe was saying. And then, you can catch different ones and depending on what it is, it can be like true or false. But I think the process of catching one is like what makes it valid or invalid, because that's the process where you're using sound logic through the process of knowing it and through the process of using logic to know that. But you can know the process is true, but you can't know the thing is true.
Okay. So I'm gonna fast forward just a little bit. If I can. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I think I'm not able to forward. It's,
Try to like connect what everyone's been saying and connect it back.
yeah, I won't be able to. So I don't want to show this whole thing, but it's amazing their reasoning. So the last, I wanted to entertain some questions before I give you the stimulus, and knowing that we have about 7 minutes left, I just want to give this opportunity to take questions. No? Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah.
When I guess, was it Dr. J went to Hawaii? Whoever went to Hawaii and you said that they were in the schools there, were they in just regular public schools? Were they in the indigenous based schools? Like what schools were they in?
They were in public schools, and they were in failing public schools. And after a few years, we have data on this, they've become one of the top performing schools in the state. And it's not just P4C Hawaii, it's not just philosophy for children, but it's also the mindfulness techniques they've also incorporated. But you go to these schools and you don't see any litter on the floor. You see children helping one another. I saw a classroom where there was a blind student and there were children helping their fellow student without being told, hey, you have to take care of her. It was just this natural thing. Oh, this is the object here. This is the ball. Here you go. I don't see that here. I don't see that in normal classes. I don't see children looking out for one another, caring for one another. There's something special in Hawaii from doing P4C Hawaii that I think more schools in general can benefit from. Especially if we're having a problem with teacher burnout, we're having a problem with student burnout, and it's a great remedy for that. Yes.
So I'm curious because I mean I think that what you're doing here is really attractive, and I can see the value of doing this, and I can see the value of doing this in public schools as well. And I wish, from a standpoint, we have 4 kids, and it was like interesting. Like, gosh, I wish our public schools, this is the kinds of things that we're doing. The question I have is whether and to what degree you see things like this having the capacity to sort of kind of gain ground within public settings, because just to use the my own like local example, so my kids go to my old public school, so to my own my old elementary school, and I would say that the intellectual climate right now has really shifted from where it was growing up and is actually almost the exact opposite of this, in that it's a very kind of like heavy-handed ideologically, like there is a sort of set of beliefs and ways of thinking that people are supposed to adhere to. And it's actually interesting. It's kind of the way that you described the philosophy teacher in the beginning, where it's like, this is the truth. And if you don't disagree with, or if you disagree with this, then you're going to be dealt with in an unpleasant sort of way.
Yeah.
That's like the culture that has developed, and it's difficult because it's so deeply entrenched, I think, within the culture of public schools in a setting like this, and it's so deeply entrenched. And if you go back to the places where, the places where like teacher accreditation takes place, and you see and hear the things that they're doing, that then the students and administrators are drawing upon. It's almost exactly the opposite of this. And so maybe my question is, do we have much hope for something like this actually taking place? Because I think that having like open discussion, especially in public spaces, is awesome and fantastic, and is absolutely what I think public spaces are for. I just don't even know. It's almost like this is like belongs to like a parallel sort of like universe or something like this right now, just because it's so far away from like what the direction things have been going these days.
So my response is, let's give it a chance.
Yeah.
Give me an example. Invite me to your school and I will show you. Because once they see children mastering these tools, they master these tools right away. And using them, the teachers and the principal, they'll see right away that this helps critical thinking. And it could work with any stimulus. It could work with their dogmatic pedagogy. Have the children question. Have the children question what their teachers are telling them. And then they get the tools to think differently from what they are taught. But keep in mind, they will also ask you, well, why? Why, Dad? What are the reasons for why I have to take out the trash? And then you can have a conversation about contributing to the house. So you can have these, deeper conversations rather than, I don't feel like taking out the trash. So it only takes one teacher to adopt this method, and then for the students to show this amazing progress, and then for other teachers to see how that student responded to using the tools and how improved their critical thinking, to other teachers wanting to adopt it. And I think eventually there will be a wave, there will be a movement, and we can spread this. And what's amazing is, if you have students in 4th and 5th grade who've grown up with P4C Hawaii, they can train and teach other teachers. So it's, at least that's the way it works in Hawaii, and it's amazing.
I'm kind of stuck on the fact that it worked in Hawaii.
Okay.
And I guess my question, or where I'm trying to get to, is like, how much of the, people who come from an indigenous culture, and that culture being connected to the environment and the land, and like the respect of all of that, and the respect of elders, and respect of children, how much that played into it being a successful model there. Because I think some cultures can tend to more easily get into that respectful part than others. And I'm not saying that, just kind of like just throwing it up in the air. I don't know, but it almost seems like it does blend so easily with the cultural pivot.
So when I went and observed the classrooms, it seemed like the teachers felt a duty to teach the Hawaiian language, Hawaiian words. And so the students there do grow up learning Hawaiian indigenous values, to respect the land. But Waikiki Public Elementary School might be unique in that. But there is this intentional focus to make all the children feel seen and heard. And that includes incorporating words from Japan, because they have Japanese students incorporating Hawaiian indigenous values in the classroom. So along with other values as well. Okay, yes, in the back.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, that I'm so grateful that this work is being done. I had no idea that this was a thing. I came here to the GTU after being an adjunct philosophy professor at Utah Valley University for a number of years. And I built an ethics and values curriculum around the idea of curiosity being the opposite of hatred. And I believe that deeply. And I believe that curiosity is a virtue that needs to be cultivated. And kind of in response to the other comments that were given, there is a hunger for it. Especially young adults are so saturated with their digital devices that they're fleeing to the analog these days. There's record stores on Telegraph that people flock to. People are buying VCRs and cassette players because people are tired of the virtual, the disconnected. I feel like we live in a moment of grand opportunity that I feel like this needs to be disseminated. I really do. So I just want to commit for the work I do.
I agree. I think it's the zeitgeist. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is the stimulus. And wait, what time is it? Oh, okay. So this is the stimulus, and then just so think about the stimulus. I could write it up on the board when if you want to join me. This is the stimulus. Psalm 120. For a long time, my soul dwelt with those who hate peace. I am at peace, but when I speak, they come to wage war. So you have your Good Thinkers Toolkit. Come up with one question for discussion related to this. Now, it can be about what does it mean, or it could be about your personal experience, and you can ask a question. You can ask a question about what's going on in the news as it relates, right? So whatever comes up in your soul, in your mind about this question, about this quote, this is the stimulus. And I want to show you that we can have a 40-minute discussion and 2 lines of text.